Hey everybody, what is going on? Today I'm going to be giving you a step-by-step point of view walkthrough on how to build a computer. I'm actually going to be taking some of the parts from my old computer and transplanting them into the new one to save some money, but you're also going to see some of that process as well. The goal of this video is to give you a first-hand look into how to build a PC in hopes that it can help somebody out there just starting out or who might be stuck trying to complete their first PC build. Or heck, maybe even somebody on their 100th build will get some benefit out of watching this video. Feel free to skip around the video to the part that you are interested in seeing or struggling with. All of the timestamps will be below and they'll be labeled for each step in each part of the PC. Now, everyone has to start somewhere, so good luck and let's get started. But first, a word from our sponsor, privacy.com. If you've ever been nervous about typing your credit card info into some random website, this is definitely for you. Privacy lets you create virtual cards that protect your real debit or credit cards when you shop online. It's like giving websites a decoy card, one that you can completely control. You can set spending limits so a subscription can't overcharge you, pause or delete a card instantly if you don't trust a merchant, or you can even lock a card to a single site, so if the number leaks or they get hacked, it's useless anywhere else. You can also use this as a card directly inside your Apple or Android wallets on your phones. The personal plan is free and gives you up to 12 virtual cards per month. The Plus plan is $5 a month. The Pro plan is $10 a month. There's a premium plan that comes in at $25 a month. When you sign up through my link, you and I both get $5 in privacy credit to spend anywhere online. It's a simple way to protect your money, your identity, and your peace of mind while grabbing a little bonus on the way. Check out the link in the description below to start using privacy.com today. Thanks again to Privacy for sponsoring. Now let's get back into the video. All right, everybody, here is a full parts list for my build. So we have the AMD Ryzen 9 9950X3D for the CPU, which is an absolute powerhouse for both gaming and creative workloads. Is it overkill for 99% of the people in the world? Yes, but I got it. I wanted it. So here we go. If you want to get it, you can get it as well. There's no such thing as overkill if it's not fun. So this is definitely a CPU that's going to be lasting me a long time. I came from a build that I built back in 2021 when the 5950X came out, and I haven't rebuilt a computer since then. So I'm hoping that this lasts me about the same amount of time so I don't have to keep upgrading every couple of years. So next up, I have the Thermal Grizzly contact sealing frame to keep perfect mounting pressure across the chip. And that's going to be paired with the Thermal Grizzly Kryo sheet for consistent thermal transfer without the mess of traditional paste. Now, I usually just use paste. However, in this build, I wanted to kind of take it over the top and get something different so that maybe I don't have to provide or do as much maintenance over the life of the build. So the Kryo sheets will actually last a little longer than the paste and actually offer a little bit better thermal cooling and thermal transferring. Will most people notice that? No. Will I notice that? Probably not, but I thought I would give it a try this go round. On the cooling side, we have a Be Quiet Pure Loop 2, which offers solid performance and nearly silent operation. Again, this isn't the most expensive one. It doesn't have a fancy screen on it or anything like that. I don't need that. I don't want that. If I did have this on my desk, then that would be a different story. But the Be Quiet Pure Loop 2 offers everything that I needed to keep the 9950X3D cool. For memory, we're using the G.Skill Flare X5 DDR5 32 gigabytes, which is tuned for AM5 stability and has great latency. Again, here I picked the one in the middle of the pack. It's not the most expensive. It's not the least expensive. It has great latency and great timing, so it should be perfect for what I'm doing. And again, 32 gigs is probably the perfect amount for me. If you're doing any kind of AI workloads or anything like that that requires more RAM, then I would suggest going with more. But if you're just playing video games and doing the little AI and editing that I'm doing, 32 gigs will suffice. So for the power supply, I'm using a Seasonic Vertex GX 1200, which is a fully modular power supply that's super efficient and definitely overbuilt, so I can upgrade everything in the future if I need to. It's definitely overkill for the majority of graphics cards out there. However, if you have a 3090 like me, or you plan on upgrading to a 5090 or a 6090 or 7090 in the future, it definitely future-proofs your build for that. So on the motherboard side, I'm going to be using the Asus ProArt X870E Creator Wi-Fi. This is an excellent platform that has great connectivity, solid VRMs, and AM5 support for the 9950X3D. It also has connectors out the wazoo. So if you're looking for a board that has a ton of USB ports and Thunderbolt and all of that jazz, this one is for you. On the graphics card side, I'll be using the EVGA RTX 3090, which still delivers incredible power for gaming, editing, and AI workloads. I don't really see a use or benefit for me to upgrade to a 5090, and also I just don't want to pay for one. So I'm going to be waiting for the 6090 or heck, maybe even the 7090 series before I actually upgrade, where the 3090 is going to be perfect for me for the time being. And finally, it's all going to be going into the Fractal North XL. This thing has a super clean design, has great airflow, and one of the biggest reasons that I got this case was that it has a ton of space for cable management, cooling, or pretty much whatever I want to do with it. I want to be able to upgrade it and throw a big new graphics card in it in a couple of years. I can do that. Really can do anything that I couldn't do. And another big reason that I chose this case is I'm coming from a mini ITX build where I had this 3090 and it was very, very hard to manipulate and move around. So with this, I wanted to have all the room and all of the availability to go in and put in a big new graphics card 3 or 4 years from now without having to worry about it. All right, everybody, that was my parts list. Now, yours may be different. Yours may be higher tier, yours may be lower tier, but definitely just basically slot in whatever you have in the different sections as we go forwards, because they're exactly the same. One is just different. One costs more, one costs less. They all go into the same holes. That's what she said. But that being said, let's go on to the next portion of the video. All right, guys, you can skip ahead if you don't want to see this part, but I'm going to be transplanting some of the old parts that I have in this old PC here into the new one. Now, this isn't the mini ITX build that I talked about. I'm actually going to be pulling the ProArt 4060 16GB card out of this build and putting it in the mini ITX build to replace the 3090. But as you can see here, I also have 64GB of DDR4 RAM. I'm not going to be able to use that in the new build because it's DDR5. I also have an i9 9900KF, which I had overclocked to about 5500 megahertz, which was fun. And then the main thing that I'm trying to pull out of this build is essentially the Be Quiet Pure Loop 2, as well as all the fans. I don't want to have to go out and buy new fans. Now, I could go get some fancy RGB fans. However, this build is going to be off to the side of my desk where pretty much nobody can really see it. And that's intentional, is to keep the heat away from my legs and from my face. Now, in the future, I may make another build that's prettier to look at, but overall, I'm just going to be taking apart this build to get the fans, to get the AIO off, and to get the 4060 out to transplant into my mini ITX build so that I can build a sim racer. There'll be another video for that coming soon once I can afford it, but I think that's going to be really fun. So stay tuned for that video. And something else to note about this PC, I was using it as my stream PC, where I was using the mini ITX build as my game PC. So I had the mini ITX connected into a capture card, and then the capture card connected into this PC, which I used for streaming. I used it pretty much every day since about 2020 when I originally bought it from Main Gear. And when it came from Main Gear, it looked completely different. It had a full custom water cooling system and all of that fun stuff there. It was actually around $5,000 to $6,000 back in 2020 before everything went crazy. And I love the way that build looked. However, upgrading it was a pain in the butt. So when my 2080 Ti that was fully water cooled died, I had to rebuild it into this version. So the main reason this PC looks the way it does is because of this. This actually died on me. This is my 2060 Ti, and as you can see, it has a water block on here and everything. But the main reason it looks like that is because this actually died on me, and I had to go in and rebuild it. I didn't want to redo all of the water cooling because on the new graphics card, I would have had to get a new water block and redo all of the custom piping that was done by Main Gear when I originally bought it. And I didn't want to do that. I didn't want to send it back to Main Gear. I didn't want to spend a ton of money on it. So I basically just ripped all of that stuff out, put that in storage, and then rebuilt it to this version, which it kicks ass, and it definitely did its job for the past couple of years, but it's time to upgrade, and that is what we are doing today. So let's get on with the PC build. All right, so now I'm going to be taking off some of these parts from my other PC that I'm going to be transplanting onto the new one. I'm actually going to be breaking this down completely, so it kind of gives you a look into how to break down a PC if you do buy a used one off of Facebook Marketplace or something like that. This may give you some insight to that. But first off, I'm going to start off by removing the GPU and putting it back in the box. So this is a 4060 ProArt Ti with 16 gigabytes of RAM. I'm actually going to be using it in my mini ITX build to replace the 3090 that I took out of it to put in this new build. And to be honest, I shifted this into my mini ITX, and to be honest, I think it's going to be rock solid in that build. I'm going to be using it to build a sim racing rig. I think it's going to be just perfect for that. It's going to allow me to save a little bit of room and a little bit of money, so I don't have to build a completely new PC for that sim racing rig, because like we all know, sim racers are expensive. So look at this. This is why you keep your boxes, kids. So if I do take it out of a build, I can put it directly in the box and then store it if I want to, and then bring it out and put it in a new build, or it can be my backup, it can be my test mule, whatever. It doesn't matter. Having the box has been killer. If you can keep all your boxes, throw them in the attic or something, just as long as you can keep them so that you have somewhere safe to put your graphics cards in the future if you do upgrade or move on to a new system. Next up, I'm going to be removing the SSDs. Now these are a little finicky just because of the tiny screws that are on them. On the newer motherboards, you actually have a little switch that you can just click and it comes right off, and then you can put the new one on if you're building a new one or replacing it. But in this instance, the screws were the bane of my existence. I'm going to be removing the Wi-Fi antennas next, so I don't break them, to be honest. They are very brittle, or they feel really brittle at least. And one thing to note is if you are building a PC, you want to have Wi-Fi antennas on your motherboard. Now, most people don't like the way they look and they don't think they need them. However, a lot of motherboards actually use the Wi-Fi antennas for Bluetooth. So if you build your new PC and you're trying to connect up your controller, it won't work well, or it'll cut in and out. And ask me how I know that. I had the exact same problem originally when I got this build from Main Gear, and I couldn't figure out why the Bluetooth wouldn't work. And lo and behold, it was because I didn't have the Wi-Fi antennas on the motherboard. So definitely don't be like me. Be sure to install your Wi-Fi antennas. Next up, I'm going to be removing the Wi-Fi card. And the main reason that I got this Wi-Fi card was I got this build back in 2020, and I wanted to get the new Wi-Fi that everybody and their mom has, and I upgraded my Wi-Fi at home, and I wasn't getting the benefit of it in this PC. So I got this Wi-Fi card that gave me Wi-Fi 6, and here we are removing it today, where new motherboards come with Wi-Fi 7, which is what I have on my new build. Additionally, something else that I added to this build was a USB hub so that I could have more USB inputs. The new build that I have now will take care of everything that I need. However, this one was pretty slim pickings in terms of the amount of USBs that I had available to me. So I had to use a hub on a hub on a hub, and at the end of the day, that just wasn't sustainable because I always had issues with the ones at the end of the chain. So having a USB hub like this just added in and another PCIe slot was definitely a huge benefit. Oh man, look at this rat's nest. I'm gonna have to undo it all. It was so beautiful, man. Now, unfortunately, I'm going to unplug all of this. I hate this part. I did so much work in the wire management and wire hiding and all of that when I first built this. I did all of this wire management work, and I tried to make it look really nice. And I used a lot of zip ties, which I definitely regret. But I hate this part, so let's get it done. Next up, we're going to be removing the power supply and the screws here. This isn't really complicated, but make sure you have all of your cables unplugged from it. After you unscrew it, you can pull it out a little bit if you need to, and then just unplug everything. You definitely don't want to be pulling on this, because especially if you haven't unplugged all of the cables in the box yet. Now, if you're a freak like me and kept the boxes to everything that you own, go ahead and put that thing back in the box. Next up, I'm going to be removing all of the fans so I can reuse these. I don't need any of the fancy fuckers that you can get from the store that are like $200 for a 3-pack that have the infinity mirrors on them with all of the RGB. While I think those are cool, I don't need them because I'm going to have this computer off to the side. I just need these fans. They are perfectly good. Again, they're just some Be Quiet fans that I'm going to be using in my new build. And next up, I'm going to remove the AIO, which is what I was after the whole time in tearing all of this down. I just need to clean the contact point and be super careful to not let it hit anything. I generally will clean the paste off of this and then wrap it in a towel so that if it does bang against anything, it won't hurt anything. Something else to note here, I'm going to be leaving the fans on the AIO. There's no need for me to take them off because on the new build, I'm just going to be transplanting it into the new case and plugging everything back up there. Next up, I'm going to take out the motherboard. I have to make sure to get all these screws out first. And then here you go. Here it is. Oh, and I can't forget this thing, this stupid cover that goes on the back here. I freaking hate these things. F you, mate. F you. Now I'm going to be tidying up what's left here. I want to put the sides and the top back together. Be careful, guy. Be careful, it's glass, buddy. Now I'm going to put this case away for safekeeping. Bye-bye, we'll see you later. You've been good to me for the past 5 years. There you go, buddy. I'll put you in a safer place later. All right, now that we have that out of the way, let's start by preparing and unboxing your case. Now, this may not be the first step for a lot of people, but for me, I like to know what I'm going to be working with and have everything laid out and clean. So this is what I like to start with. So you definitely want to unbox your case. Now, be careful when you're unboxing this. Sometimes it's kind of finicky in terms of how the cases are actually inside of the boxes. Sometimes you'll have these little black clips at the bottom. There'll be like 4 of them that you undo, and then the box slides right off the case. And then other times, in this instance, I had to kind of shake it out on the table and let it come out of the box that way. And then it was surrounded by foam, which you just take off, and it's pretty easy to do. But definitely be careful when you're doing this, especially if you have a case with glass or any kind of fragile outside to it. Now, one of the biggest things that I regret doing is not keeping the box. I didn't keep the box for my original build from Main Gear that I got back in 2020. I also didn't keep the box for my mini ITX build, and I have finally learned my lesson. And for this, I'll be keeping the box. I'm just going to be keeping it in the garage or inside the attic for safekeeping. And if I ever have to move again, I can just put my PC inside the box and it's fully protected no matter what. And pro tip here, I know a lot of us dudes don't like using the user guide, but definitely keep this handy. It's going to be very useful in the coming steps, especially if you're just starting out. This is something that you're going to be using religiously throughout this build. Now, once you get the case out of the box, make sure to visually inspect it to make sure everything is good. Make sure there's no dents or anything like that that would kind of like trigger you to return it to wherever you got it, whether it be Amazon, whether it be Main Gear or any of the other computer builders out there. Definitely be sure to inspect it, because if you start taking things apart and they notice that and then you see something that's wrong on the outside, they'll be like, well, you did this. So definitely just be sure to inspect this right as soon as you take it out of the box and get it to this point so that you can return it if that's the case. Pun intended. So as part of this, let's go ahead and take apart the case and prepare to build in it. The LTT screwdrivers coming in clutch, lttstore.com. You're welcome, Linus. So you're going to want to remove all the panels to your case so that you can see in it and see what you're working with. Tuck away any loose cables or anything like that just for safety to make sure it doesn't get scratched or anything like that. And you also want to look for hidden treasures that may have screws and other stuff in it that you're going to need for things in the future. Oh, look, there you go. I found a treasure. And for this part, remove whatever you don't need, and understand that if you are a new builder to this, pretty much whatever is attached to the case, inside the case, at least for cables, you definitely want to leave in there. You don't want to remove any cables or fans that are currently in there, but the boxes, the manuals, the sides, the panels, anything that would limit you working in the actual case, you'll want to go ahead and remove and set to the side. And another good rule of thumb here is if you don't know what it is, just remove it. It's fine. It'll be on the floor next to you. It'll be in the same room with you, and you can always put it back in. Now your case is ready to build in. It's so pretty. Much cable management. Yes, let's go. And before you move on to the next step, definitely review the user manual. Just skim through it. You don't have to memorize it or anything like that. Just skim through it, kind of get an understanding of what it provides, because everybody needs to do this. I don't care how many times you've done this. I reference the manual a ton still. So definitely do this. Pro tip. Just do it, okay? I'm watching you. All right, the next step is unboxing the power supply and preparing it for your build. So go ahead and grab your power supply, set it up on the table. If you still have your case on the table next to you, go ahead and remove the power supply frame. There should be 2 screws or maybe 4 in this case. Just go ahead and remove those and set them to the side. But for this, go ahead and grab your power supply box and get it on the table. Go ahead and open it, take off the plastic. Oh yeah. But we're going to want to keep everything in order. But for this next step, we're going to unbox the power supply. So we're going to prepare and unbox the power supply, keeping all the goodies together. And the reason we want to do this is we want to lay out all the cables so that we can organize them in a way that we know what we're working with, and so that you can understand what we're working with. And you can basically organize them, get them together, and put them all to the side. So you remember that bracket that I told you to take off your case? Now we're going to install it on the power supply itself. And one thing that I've messed up here is make sure that it's oriented in the right way. So mock up. So what you can do is slide the power supply into the case and kind of look at how it should be mounted and see what way that little bracket should be mounted. Pull it back out and go ahead and mount it outside of the case. So be sure to snug up the screws on this frame. You don't have to go crazy with it, but it does have a little bit of weight to it, so you can't just leave them loosey-goosey, but you also aren't running an F1 car. So it's okay if it's just snug. Next up, we're going to connect the wires you need to install before you actually install it into the case. And I used to install power supplies without the wires on it into the case first. And I've learned from experience, it's just way easier to do it outside and then pull the wires in as you are sliding the power supply into the case. So for this, you're going to want your motherboard cable, your CPU cable, and your GPU cable. Now these cables should have some lettering on them, especially nowadays, everything is labeled. So you should just be able to find these really easily. If not, the motherboard cable is a 24 pin. So it's going to be one of the more wide cables here. And the CPU is actually going to be labeled. Like there's no way, shape, or form that is not going to be labeled. And if you have a newer GPU, you're going to have a 12 pin. It's kind of, I don't know, about an inch long there. And you should be able to look at your GPU and kind of match up the connector that you need for that. Again, these should be labeled. So just make sure to look at the labels on the actual cables and grab the ones that you need and plug them into the corresponding labels on the back of the power supply. So for me, I like to keep everything tidy. So go ahead and pack up everything back into the power supply box that you don't need. So the cables that you connected to the power supply and the actual power supply itself, obviously you're going to leave those out of the box, but everything else, put it back in the box and push it off to the side. So now all that work you did is going to pay off. So let's go ahead and install the power supply in the case. First, you're going to want to grab all your wires and push them into the hole where the power supply is going to go, and go ahead and grab both and push them through into the case, pull them into the case. Go ahead. Yeah, there you go. And then go ahead and mount that bad boy up. Again, the screws here, you don't have to get super tight with. Make sure they're snug. Make sure that you do screw them down adequately enough. However, you don't have to over tighten them. Just be sure that you don't, because if you strip these screws, it's a pain in the butt to get fixed. Now do a flip trick and tidy everything up, and let's move on to the next step. So for this next step, we're going to be preparing the AIO. Oh yeah, look at this bad boy, the Be Quiet Pure Loop 2. There's actually a Be Quiet Pure Loop 3 now, but for everything that I need, this still will work fine. It still performs great. So if you do have parts that are a little bit older, they're not the newest thing, I can guarantee you that they're still going to work just fine. So for this, you want to go through all of the accessories and make sure that you have it ready for your CPU, whether it be AMD or Intel. They're going to have different brackets, so you just need to make sure you grab the right one. All of these should be labeled in the packaging, and then the user manuals for your cooler, it should have what you need to use and how you need to install it. So definitely be sure to look that up and follow those to a T. And again, here is definitely another reason to keep boxes, because I kept this box from when I got it about 2 years ago, and it's paying off now because I actually used this on an Intel board originally, as you saw in the first of the video, and now I'm moving it over to AMD. So I'm definitely glad that I kept it. And once you're done preparing that and getting everything ready for the AIO, just set it off to the side. It's prepared now, and you are prepared to go to the next step. Now, the next step in this whole process is to prepare your motherboard. Now, you don't have to be like me and use gloves, but I was here to just keep some of my sweaty hands off of some of the parts that I was touching. And I definitely sweat balls with these on, but I guess enjoy? I don't know. You do you. If you want to use gloves, then use gloves, but you don't have to. Just make sure you wash your hands before you start handling these things. Look at this work of art. It looks so freaking sweet. This is the ProArt X870E Creator Wi-Fi. Now, the first thing that we're going to want to do here is open the box and take out the motherboard, obviously. Don't be a scared little bitch here. Just be gentle. It's not going to break. It's not that brittle. I mean, if you dropped it like from where I'm standing to the ground, it would definitely break, but try not to do that. But once you do pull it out, set it to the side in the wrapping. Don't take it out of the wrapping yet. You're going to want to go through the box and the accessories here and take out what you need and leave what you aren't going to use away and off of the table or just somewhere else. So you can always come back to the box, and I always say it's best to leave it where it came from. If you don't need it, just leave it in the box. Otherwise, you're going to have some clutter, it's going to be messy, and then you're not going to be able to find a part. It's going to be all chaos. Oh, look at this fancy ruler I'll never use. Thanks, Asus. You're a bro's bro. Bro. Definitely check out the whole box for any kind of treasures that may be hidden. Take out every piece that you can and look in every crevice, because sometimes they hide things in here in little tiny compartments. All right, let's take the motherboard out of the wrapping, and you can just use the box here to set it on versus setting it on the table. This actually helps a little bit in terms of giving it kind of some give when you're pushing on it, and it's not setting on a table that could be dirty or something of that nature, you know this box should be pretty clean, and it doesn't hold static, so that's another positive of why they just use the box. But if you have some other thing like a mod mat from Gamers Nexus or something like that, you can set it on that as well. Just make sure that your work area is clean. But this motherboard is just truly a work of art in comparison to any other motherboard that I've ever used. It has enough USB inputs to hook up Neo to the Matrix. It has Thunderbolt. It has a display port on the motherboard itself, which is sweet for troubleshooting if you need that in the future. It has 10 gig networking, which is important for creators with a NAS setup at home or that operate on a local network. It also has Wi-Fi 7, which is one of the big reasons that I bought this board. It has enough M.2 storage slots to download a ton of Napster tunes. Kudos. Some of the kiddos out there watching this won't get that reference. And don't worry, I'm going to save the peels for later. You'll also want to make sure that you keep the plastic wrapper that it came in. So after you've done all of that, close up the box and go ahead and set your motherboard on the box and prepare it for surgery. Let's go. Look at that thing. It looks so good. I can't freaking wait for you guys to see this finished product. Also, if you don't have an LTT screwdriver, it freaking slaps. Definitely get one, lttstore.com. One thing that I forgot to mention here for the motherboard is make sure you prepare your standoffs for your AIO mount. You may have done this already in a step earlier, but these are kind of confusing, so make sure you lay it out visually beforehand and you should be okay. Go ahead and install the AIO mounts in your motherboard, and then we'll go ahead and move on to the next step. All right, y'all, for this next step, we're going to go ahead and install the M.2 storage. Now, this is actually much easier than it used to be. There used to be a little screw that was a pain in the ass and my hands shake and I would always lose it. And nowadays it just comes with a little tiny clip that you flick, and voila, you can install the M.2, flick it back, and you're done. Ah, yes, the M.2 cooler comes with cooling pads. So if you do see this, make sure to remove the actual plastic from the cooling pad itself. Otherwise, it's not going to work properly. It's not going to transfer the heat properly. So whenever you're reinstalling this on top of your M.2, make sure that that plastic is done. And surprisingly enough, this little heatsink will help keep temps down. I don't know by how much. I don't know if I would actually be able to take advantage of its cooling capabilities, but a lot of creators out there that are using this to its limits, this will definitely help them keep the temps down on the SSD. Overall, I would definitely suggest having two M.2s, a smaller 512 gigabyte to 1 terabyte for the operating system. And then the second, you can get a bigger 2 terabyte or bigger drive for the other slots that you can have your games on or other content on. For me, I have a 1 terabyte for the operating system and any kind of work programs or anything like that I'm working with. And then on the additional drives, I have a 2 terabyte for my games. And then I have another 2 terabyte for my video and content that I'm recording only. So it definitely keeps it separated in case one drive fails, which I've actually had happen in the past and I lost everything. So this separation definitely helps in terms of making sure that your data is safe in the instance that something does fail. Now on this board specifically, there are a total of 4 slots, and I'm only going to be using 2 to 3 at the moment. So this is going to be overkill for most, but in this case it was perfect for me. It gives me the option to upgrade to 4 total if I need it in the future, or just take the 3 that I'm currently using and transfer them over, and it makes it perfect for upgrades in the future. Now I actually was trying to hunt down the parts for the M.2, the little screws. I thought I lost them already, only to realize that this has the fancy new mechanism that doesn't require the screws. Nice one, dummy. So set the motherboard back on the box and install the M.2s. And then if you do have a heatsink, make sure to install that. Don't forget to take off the plastic from the cooling pads before you do that. So now that you've installed your main M.2, go ahead and install the other ones. I'd always go with the biggest one next. Honestly, it doesn't matter a ton here. It's just nice to have order, and my OCD thanks you. And in the future, it'll also help you as well. In case one of the drives does go bad, you'll know, hey, it was my 1 terabyte, which I had in the top slot, or it was my 2 terabyte, which I had in the second slot, or it was my 4 terabyte, which I had in the third or the fourth slot. So if you tier it that way, it makes it really, really easy for maintenance in the future. And installing the other M.2s is super easy. This should take you no longer than a couple of minutes. So if you do get stuck here, let me know in the comments below. So get those M.2s in there. The rest of them should be super easy and it shouldn't take you long to do this. But again, don't forget to remove the film prior to installing. All right, next up we have the CPU. Now let's get everything we need ready for this. For this build, I'm going to be using an AM5 contact ceiling frame, and by no means do you need to use this. I'm just using this. I want to go balls to the wall with this build and do everything that I can. You know, if it's not too expensive, this wasn't that expensive, so I was like, hey, let's go ahead and add this in here. But basically what this does, it ensures that there is as much contact with the AIO as possible. And for this specifically, you have to be very careful not to over tighten these, because with this, if you over tighten it just a little too much, you're going to hear a crack, and that is your motherboard cracking. I personally have not done this, but I've seen some people on YouTube with some other builds do this, and it is heartbreaking. So definitely just be careful not to over tighten these. Now this looks super scary, but it's actually super easy. The hardest thing to do is just to not over tighten it. So I put my trust in you that you can do that. And from here on out, just follow along. And funny enough, this bag was actually really, really hard to open. The streets don't know me, but why is this so complicated? Jesus. These gloves are going to be the death of me, and they are going to be a huge problem. Finally, I got it open. Look at this, all of the goodies and the install guide. Surprise, motherfucker. I'm the install guide now. A note, how cute. All right, so for the next part of this step, you're going to need to remove the stock CPU holder here. This isn't super complicated at all and has 4 screws with the fancy head. The contact frame actually comes with this, so don't worry. So be careful not to damage anything underneath this when taking it off. Definitely be sure to use 2 hands. Now you're going to want to set that to the side and move on. Let's move on to the next step. Now that's where the CPU goes. You don't want to mess this up. So let's grab the contact frame out of the box and get everything ready here. Take the CPU out of its box. It has a big old box for something that is so tiny. That's what she said. There isn't much in these boxes at all. Open that bad boy up. Look at the accessories and the manual if you want to. Nothing really important here, but it gives you a guide on how to install it if you'd like to look at it. Now go ahead and put that stuff away. Go ahead and grab the CPU. Look at it. It's so beautiful. Yes. Now let's go ahead and install the CPU. There's a little arrow dot on one of the corners, so just line that up when you are installing it. And for this CPU specifically, there's not a need to apply much, if any, pressure here. Just set it in softly and you're ready for the next step. Now that we have the CPU laying in there exactly where we want it, we want to go ahead and install the contact frame on top of the CPU. We're going to want to first prepare the screws and finger tighten them first. Go ahead and use the tool that has been provided. If you have one of these, kudos to you, but my guess is you don't. So definitely use this tool. Don't use anything that your dad gave you. Oh, take off those gloves, motherfucker. So when you're installing the contact frame, make sure to tighten 1/4, then drop down to the opposite corner and follow it around. Think of a star shape and then go in that way, in that shape. It's always going to be directly opposite of the one that you're tightening. And this will basically ensure an even tighten all around the board. Similar to how you would tune a snare drum. If you know, you know, but make sure this is snug and not too tight. This can break stuff, so definitely be careful. Tighten it in the order like I'm showing you here and you'll be golden. Go ahead and wipe off any fuzzies that you see. Look at that. It looks clean as fuck. Wow. This is one of my favorite builds that I've ever done. Pack up all the accessories and move it aside. And clean up your area, and we're ready for the next step. Next up, we're going to install the RAM. Now, this isn't too hard at all. The biggest mistake people make here is not pushing the RAM hard enough. Don't be scared here. You're going to hear a nice crunch when it's in properly, but also make sure that it's aligned properly before you go all Captain America on it, okay? Okay. One thing that you're going to want to do if you're not running 4 sticks of RAM is to ensure that you input your current RAM into the correct slots. Your motherboard manual will have these specifics for you, but it's typically B and D or A and C, but this will vary based on your motherboard, so confirm with your manual before moving forwards. Also, I'm only using 32 gigs of RAM. I had 64 gigabytes of RAM in my last build and it was overkill for me, but if you have the cash to burn, enjoy your full DIMM slots. Now tidy up your area and you're ready for the next step. All right, the next step here is installing everything inside of the case. This is super exciting, I know. We are almost there, almost. So let's get going. So you're gonna wanna move the case back up onto the table. You'll want to lay it on its side and prepare it to put the motherboard in. This is actually pretty easy to line up, but the side where all the inputs are going is the most tricky. You don't wanna push it too hard as you don't wanna break anything, because guess what? I have. Pro tip. No, gotta remove the plastic here first. Ah, yes. Sweet plastic rips. Now go ahead, lay that motherboard in there. Make sure it's aligned. You should be able to see some little tiny holes in there. Make sure it's aligned with the hole on the back of the case. Good boy. Now go back to your case accessories to find the motherboard screws that you need to screw down your motherboard. Gotta take off the gloves again here because I can't handle these small things with these on. Double check that you got the right screws. Now here's a pro tip. You can actually check and see if you got the right screws in the manual if you need to. It should have a number on it, and then in your manual it should tell you what those screws are for. Now screw that motherboard down, but also be careful not to over tighten here. If you are missing one screw here, that should be fine. Don't sweat it, but my OCD will definitely find you in the night. Go ahead, give your motherboard a little pet. Oh yeah, there you go. And Viola, your motherboard is installed. Look at that beauty. Oh yeah. Smoking. Now for the next step, we're going to be installing the AIO. Now remember the AIO that we prepared earlier? Let's go ahead and grab that thing. Grab that thing. Grab it. Grab it. Grab that thing. Make sure you find the screws that you need to install this on top of the case. And make sure you install the fans on the radiator if you haven't already. Luckily for me, it was already on. And the pro tip for anybody installing these, especially if you're newer, you want to remember that the pump needs to be lower than the actual radiator. So don't install this thing in the front upside down. Remember, gravity is your friend. Prepare all your screws here and install it in the top of your case. Hand start the screws if you need, and then come back and tighten them using the star method again that we talked about earlier. For me, I have the AIO oriented where the pump is coming from the front right. Aesthetically, it just looks better to me. You can do this in another way. You could turn it around where it comes from the left to the right, or from the front top to the down, but I would definitely just recommend putting it up on the top and then doing a front right to left. Now you're going to want to prepare the AIO to install it on the CPU. Clean it if you need to, especially if you have dogs in the vicinity, and make sure to always peel the plastic off of the bottom of the AIO. I don't know how many times I've seen in builds where people are like, hey, my build isn't performing well. And we go through and troubleshoot it, and lo and behold, they didn't take the plastic off the bottom of the AIO where it contacts the CPU. So definitely be sure to do that. So now that you have the AIO installed, you're going to want to lay the tower down, and we're going to move on to the next step. So the next step that I'm doing here, I'm preparing my thermal grizzly cryo sheet. If you have thermal paste, that's fine too. And remember, more is less. Less is not more here. You definitely want to apply generously so that you don't have to come back and add more later on. I went with a cryo sheet just because it's supposed to last a little bit longer than paste. It's not magic in terms of performance, but it's going to last a little bit longer, which is key for me and not wanting to do a ton of maintenance on this build. I have flashbacks from my old water-cooled build, and I'm never doing that again. One thing that's cool about these cryo sheets is that you can order them in the specific size to your CPU. So you can just take it out of the box, lay it on your CPU, and install the AIO on top of it. Makes it pretty easy, and it's way less messy than thermal paste. Now this part's nerve-wracking, but it's honestly not too bad. I'm just super shaky, so this was kind of tough for me. As a side note here, I don't know if you noticed it or not, but yes, the thermal grizzly contact frame requires the silicone foam inlay gasket when using liquid metal for protection, but it's optional when you're using traditional thermal paste or the cryo sheet. Just wanted to make sure that that was clear. Now go ahead and tidy everything up and prepare for the next step. Now for the next step, we're going to install the AIO onto the CPU. So here, make sure you start the screws with your fingers first, and then use the star method when you're tightening these. You want to make sure to not over tighten them. You'll know when it's tight enough. It's definitely a feeling, and if you think that you're pushing too hard, you're probably in a good spot. So when you're installing the AIO, you definitely want to try not to set it on the CPU and then pull it up and down, because it's going to grab the thermal paste and it's going to make a mess. And for me, with the cryo sheet, it actually picks up the cryo sheet and moves it around a little bit, which I don't want to happen. So do your best here to make sure that you don't raise it up and down or move it in any way once you do set it on top of the CPU. And now that you've positioned it on the CPU, screw that bad boy down. And whoops, I fucked up. See, be very careful here, guys. I've done this a couple of times and I'm still not perfect at it. Had to come back in here and unscrew this and move it a little bit because I moved my cryo sheet. If I had thermal paste, it wouldn't have done this, but I'm so shaky, I just had to go in and adjust it a little bit here. I'm just being safe here. Did I have to go in and undo this and redo it? Probably not, but I just didn't want to have to take this apart later on if something came up or I had an issue with heat. So after you have the AIO connected down to the CPU, you want to make sure you have a connector there to connect it to the pump CPU fan header. This should be labeled, albeit it's going to be kind of small, but just make sure you get it in the right one. This is important because the motherboard has this marked so it knows which one is going to the CPU AIO so that it can run the pump at 100%, unlike fans. Some AIOs will have multiple connectors here, one for the fan and one for the ARGB headers or RGB, and they will be labeled accordingly. Check that you are all good here and tidy up, but good job guys, your AIO is now installed and you're ready to go on to the next step. Next up, we want to run all the cables where they need to go to the motherboard. I typically suggest pathing these things multiple ways, making sure that you don't pull something too hard. And a pro tip here is having a lazy Susan. You know, one of those things that your mom has in the kitchen cabinets or on tables that spin pepper or salt around the table. That would have definitely been clutch to have here and something that I recommend to anybody building a PC. So what you're going to want to do here is just run all the cables to their appropriate inputs. There will be labels on the cables as well as on the motherboard. It's pretty much just matchy-matchy. This label is going to go to that label. And for most people, what I recommend is finding where that cable actually needs to go and routing it in a way that is hidden and easy to wire manage. And that being said, one of the hardest things for me to install is the power buttons for the case on the motherboard. Thankfully, the Asus motherboard comes with an adapter to make things easy, but if yours doesn't, just reference your manual to make sure things positive and negative are going where they need to. It's not the end of the world here if you don't do it right the first time, but just discount, double check just to be sure. Make sure you run your motherboard power, SATA, and HD audio connections here as well. Some of these can be bent around, but just feel it out and make sure that there isn't too much pressure on the bins or the connectors or the cables themselves. And one thing that you should also be doing as you're going along is just pulling the slack through the back of the PC and making sure that you tidy up things as you go. I wouldn't recommend zip tying anything just yet, but pulling them through and making sure that it's all tidy, or at least it's going in that direction, will help you tenfold when you are trying to wire manage down the road. Now for this next step, we're going to be installing fans. This one was actually pretty easy for me because my case came with fans. My AIO already had fans installed, and I actually am only going to be installing one fan on the back for exhaust. But if you are installing these, you already have had the fans on your AIO, so you'll just want to make sure that you put enough fans in the front of your case and then one in the back or some on the bottom. And also just remember the flow on them to make sure that you don't have too many. More fans is not always better in some cases, and it can cause positive pressure, which means no airflow is flowing to your components, which will make it get even hotter, which equals bad performance and will affect your FPS. So definitely just remember, too many fans is probably going to be overkill for you. If you have 3 in the front, 3 on the top, maybe 1 on the back, that's probably enough. That probably will suffice. If you want to put anything on the bottom, you can if you want to, but in most cases it's going to be overkill. And a pro tip here, you typically want to have your airflow coming in from the front or the bottom, and then you want all of the exhaust to be going up and out. So on your AIO, you want to make sure that the airflow is going out and up into your room. And then if you do have a fan on the back, you want to make sure that the fan is actually pulling the air out the back and up the top so that it just creates a natural flow through your PC, and it also gets the heat away from you and your computer as fast as possible. So now it's time to install the GPU. Yay! Hooray! Let's go. We're almost there. Not there yet, but we're almost there. So you're going to want to lay your case back down on its back. And if you haven't already done this yet, you're going to want to remove the metal slot brackets for the amount of slots that you'll need. One easy way to determine the amount of slots you need is on your GPU box. You'll be able to see a picture, or you actually can look at the GPU, or you can Google it and say, how many slots does this GPU take up? And it'll say 2, maybe 3. But for mine, I needed a few slots. So I actually needed 3 for mine. It's a thick boy. I think on the newer graphics cards, they only need about 2. So you're going to want to remove 2 to 3 of those metal brackets on the back where the GPU is actually going to slide in. Also, one big thing to note here is you're going to want to install your GPU on the highest PCIe slot. This is typically the one with the highest bandwidth and speed. You don't want to put it on the lowest one either, because if you have M.2s up at the top, those are going to take your bandwidth away from the ones on the bottom. So definitely just be sure to install your GPU on the top one to make sure that you're getting the maximum performance. So let's go ahead and grab your GPU and install it. So when you're installing your GPU, this will have a similar crack sound like the RAM, but it's not going to be as loud. But don't be afraid to give it a little push, but just be gentle. So once your GPU is installed there, once you've heard that nice little crack and you think you're in a great spot, you're going to want to screw the GPU in using the screws from the slot blockers that you just removed. Again, here, make sure not to over tighten, but just make sure it's sturdy and locked in. Now let's visually inspect that everything's good. Make sure that it doesn't wobble. If it wobbles, you've probably already broken something, but you should be in a good place now, but just make sure to visually inspect it before we move to the next step. All right, now that we have the GPU installed, you're going to want to set the case upright if you haven't already, so that we can install the power cables. Now you're going to want to go grab the GPU cable that is connected to your power supply, and you're going to want to make sure to run it through your case so that you can manage the wires or hide them however you see fit. Now that you kind of know where it's going, you should be able to maneuver this in a couple of different ways to hide it, to make it look good, but it typically just comes from the back and then comes right underneath your GPU and plugs right in. Luckily for me, I have 3 8-pin PCIe connectors. If you have the 12-pin, this is much quicker and cleaner. However, I don't trust that still. And I'm old school and will continue to use the 8-pin as long as I have a 3090. Sometimes these connectors are little fuckers, so just be patient and make sure everything is installed and seated properly. One of the big issues with the 12 pins is people don't push them in hard enough and they're not connected fully. So make sure that you are giving it some force to make sure that it is connected fully. Otherwise, you may have a burnt pin situation on your hands and you don't want that. I hate these little fuckers. It always fucks me up. God damn it. These things have a small track in it that connects them together. So just be patient here if you are using the 8-pin PCIe connectors. See, I finally did it. Yay. Well, I spoke too soon. I disconnected them to ensure that the cables were routed where I wanted them to go. So this just comes back to routing and things like that. This is something that you're going to do probably as well to make the cables look a little bit nicer. You're probably going to connect and disconnect things. So just follow the same process when you're reconnecting things and make sure everything is seated properly. We're almost to the final step, guys. For this next step, we're going to be looking at cable management. If you haven't done this before, I would suggest powering up the system before you cable manage, just in case there are any shenanigans, because it will happen to you and you will have to undo all of your beautiful work. But if you're confident in it, let's keep going. And if not, plug it into power and see what happens. If it powers up and everything has pretty RGB, let's keep going. If not, go back a few steps and make sure everything is connected properly, then try again. If you have any other issues powering it on, leave a comment below and we'll see if we can't help you figure it out. So if you've made it to this step, we can go ahead and start tidying up all of our cables. So for me, I would suggest just zip tying all the things. If you can get some Velcro cable ties, I would suggest getting those. But for me, I like using zip ties because they are immovable and they hold a lot better, and they also don't hold dust or dog hair, which is very key in our house, and that's why I like using zip ties. But if you want to use the Velcro buddies, you can go right ahead. It makes it a little bit easier for changing the system up in the future. But just knowing the way I am with things, I like using zip ties. So I would suggest tidying up all of the cables in the front before you move to the back. And wire management always takes me the longest, but it's one of the most satisfying and gratifying things about a build when it's finished. I mean, I love them. I don't know. You know what I'm saying. I love this. This is awesome. My OCD thanks you. All right, guys, we are almost there. We're on the next step, and the next step of this process is going to be to power on the PC. Now, if you're one of the confident ones that didn't power on before you wire managed, we're going to put you to the test. And then the ones that did and went ahead and powered on and all of that fun stuff, you can skip this step. But if you have an AM5 CPU, the first boot up is going to typically take a lot longer than any other Intel-based machine. For me, it actually took about 5 minutes for my system to boot up. I thought I did all my wire management and everything wrong, and something was terribly wrong, but it finally ended up coming up. This is also another reason why I would suggest holding off on powering it up until you have a monitor and a keyboard and a mouse connected, because I didn't. I couldn't see anything. I couldn't tell if anything was going on, and if you had any of those connected, you'd be able to know kind of what's going on with your system. But basically, I would just have a monitor, like a small monitor and a keyboard and a mouse connected, just to ensure that you have a way to see if you're actually booting up into the BIOS, Windows, or if you're boot looping. But for this step, that's really all you had to do here. If it powers on, you're good. The next step is going to get a little bit more complicated, or it could be really easy, depending on where you're coming from, what you're doing, where you've been, where you're doing, how you doing, where you've been, where you doing, where you going. But in reality, if your computer did power on and you don't have Windows installed, the next step is for you. So for this next step, if your M.2 or your SSD already had Windows installed and you boot right up into Windows, congrats, you're ready to go. This build is ready to go to the races, essentially, with some minor tweaks, obviously, but you are ready to go. On the other hand, if your SSD already had Windows and you boot up right into the BIOS, then make sure your M.2 is set to boot priority in the menu options in your BIOS. So all of the settings on every motherboard are different, but it should be pretty self-explanatory. Just go find your boot options and then set this main drive. So in this instance, your 1 terabyte or 512 gig. See, that's another reason why we get smaller ones. It's easy to identify them, and set that as your main boot drive. Save, quit, and reboot. Viola, Windows should come up now. And if it doesn't, you may have selected the wrong drive. So go back to that process, select the other drive, and it should boot up right into Windows for you. So if you're in the group of people and you boot up into BIOS and this is a brand new build for you and you don't have Windows on an SSD yet, the next steps for you will be to install Windows on your fresh new build. This sounds complicated, but it's actually pretty simple. There are only a few steps involved. You can actually get a key for a lot cheaper. I actually have another video that will walk you through everything that you need to do that step by step. So that'll be linked in my description below. Now, if you powered on your PC and you got into Windows and everything is looking good, there are a few tweaks that I always recommend doing. The first is you actually want to boot back up into BIOS and set XMP to match your RAM settings. Now, this is super simple. You're going to want to restart your computer and press delete while your computer is restarting, and it'll boot you back into the BIOS. And in this view, you'll be able to see an option for memory or XMP. You're just going to want to set it to the default setting that is on, like XMP1 or XMP2. You're going to want to save this, and then you're going to want to reboot your computer. Now, depending on your system, this may take a minute to do because it has to relearn the memory, but it should just come back up and let you log right back into Windows after a couple of minutes. And this is going to ensure that you're using your RAM to its fullest potential. The next thing that I recommend doing is downloading a free program called Fan Control. This allows you to create custom fan curves, which has been super awesome for me. It allows me to keep my computer super quiet whenever it's under a certain temperature, just say 60 degrees. And then when I'm actually gaming, after it hits 60 degrees, it ramps the fans up pretty quickly and keeps them at a level that keeps my computer cool while also keeping the noise levels down. So this is definitely an awesome tool and an awesome free software. You can actually donate to the developer, but it's actually free to use, which is awesome. The next thing I recommend doing is removing unwanted bloatware that you don't need. So just go through all of the programs that are on the computer now and basically remove anything that you don't need or won't use. Now, don't go removing things that Windows needs, but just in general, you can go in and find these things and go ahead and remove them. So once you remove some of the unwanted bloatware that you don't need from the computer, I typically recommend that you download Steam. If you don't have an account already, go ahead and create an account, because once you get Steam downloaded, you're going to want to download 3D Mark. The other program that I typically recommend people download is Blender. And once you've downloaded 3D Mark from Steam, you're going to want to go ahead and run a stress test and monitor your vitals. I typically do this and run a stress test for like 20 or 30 minutes just to make sure that my computer is good, that there's no hiccups or anything like that. And if any of the vitals seem off or the computer itself isn't cooling enough, I can go in and adjust those fan curves with fan control and just optimize the computer a little bit more. Now, this sounds daunting and it really isn't. You're just going to be running 3D Mark and the stress test in the background while you're adjusting your fan curves and watching your vitals. Now, this is important to do before you go and drop into a game session where your FPS is key. You don't want to be in a matchmaking game and your computer just crash out because it overheated because you didn't have your fan curve adjusted appropriately. Now, finally, download your favorite game and enjoy. You have just built your first computer, you have just downloaded your favorite game, and now you can enjoy playing this with your friends and family. Or you can enjoy owning noobs on Call of Duty or Halo. Yep. And that's all she wrote, guys. We are finally to the end. There are no more steps involved. Thank God. Woohoo! Congratulations on building your first PC or your 10th PC or your 100th PC. I just really hope that this guide was helpful to someone out there. But let me know in the comments below if you found it useful. If I said something that was weird, correct me. I don't care. But all in all, I definitely appreciate you watching. I definitely appreciate you hanging out with me. And until next time, remember to stay nerdy, y'all. Peace out.